The galaxy was a place of chaos. For centuries, alien factions had been fighting endless wars, each vying for power, resources, and control. The Galactic Council, meant to maintain peace, had failed to do so. It was supposed to be a place where all species could come together to solve problems, but instead, it had become a forum for arguments, broken promises, and empty negotiations. There was one constant in this vast conflict: humanity. A young species in the grand scheme of the galaxy, humans had only recently joined the stars. But their growth was quick, and they had shown an unexpected resilience in battles. While other species were content to fight for years, humans fought for what they believed in and moved forward. Their tenacity and quick adaptability made them a wild card. They were seen as the new hope for peace, though many were skeptical of their intentions. For decades, the alien races had clashed in space. The most powerful factions were the Sornak, a ruthless militaristic species that controlled vast sectors of the galaxy; the Jakar, an ancient and wise species whose intellect was unmatched, but who had a dark history of manipulation; and the Vortani, a race of traders who controlled much of the galactic economy. These three groups had been at the forefront of the war, while countless smaller races had been caught in the middle, struggling to survive. The Galactic Council had called a summit, hoping to bring an end to the fighting. The situation had reached a breaking point. Entire planets had been destroyed, and many lives had been lost. Despite all the power and wisdom of the council members, the fighting showed no signs of stopping. It was at this moment that humans were asked to step in. The Human Federation had been growing stronger, and many saw them as a new, unbiased force that could perhaps make the peace talks work. The human delegation, led by Elias Rook, a seasoned diplomat, was given a seat at the council table. This was a huge step for humanity. They had earned their place, not just through military might, but through their reputation for fairness and pragmatism. Rook was calm, composed, and determined. He understood the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He had to convince the leaders of the galaxy that peace was possible, even if it seemed like a dream. When the humans arrived at the Galactic Council's headquarters, they were met with mixed reactions. Some species looked at them with skepticism, others with hope. The Vortani, in particular, had been watching humanity closely. They knew that the humans could be useful in many ways, but they were also wary of them taking control of negotiations. The Jakar seemed uninterested at best, and the Sornak barely acknowledged the human delegation. They had their own way of doing things and were not easily persuaded. As the delegates settled into their seats, Elias took a deep breath. He was about to speak to a room full of beings who had been fighting for centuries. The idea of bringing peace to such a broken galaxy seemed impossible, but Elias believed in humanity. He believed that if they could just show the galaxy that it was possible to work together, they could end the endless conflict. The Galactic Council was massive. The room was filled with representatives from hundreds of different species, each with their own customs, laws, and beliefs. Some were tall and imposing, others short and fast-moving. Some communicated through words, others through thoughts. The variety was staggering, and it was hard to believe that such diverse beings could come together to make any decision, let alone something as important as peace. Elias stood at the front of the room, facing the galaxy's most powerful leaders. His voice was steady as he began his address. "We stand before you, not as conquerors, but as mediators. Humanity has fought many battles, but we know that the true fight is not for territory or dominance. It is for peace. We believe that there is a way forward for all of us, a way to stop the suffering and start building a future together." The room fell silent. Some leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others watched with interest. Elias continued, speaking from the heart. "We understand that it will not be easy. We understand that trust has to be earned. But we are willing to try. We are willing to put aside past differences and work with you to create a better future for all." But even as he spoke, Elias knew the challenges they would face. The factions that had been fighting for so long had their own agendas. The Sornak wanted nothing more than to expand their power. The Jakar wanted control over the galaxy's knowledge. The Vortini cared about the economy above all else. Each species had its own reason for fighting, and each had its own idea of what peace meant. The moment the trial began, the lights in the chamber dimmed, and the holographic arena flickered to life. The temperature dropped, and the air seemed to grow thicker with each passing second. The alien leaders were watching closely, their expressions unreadable as the human delegation stepped forward, their faces resolute. They were ready, but even they didn't know exactly what they were up against. Elias Rook took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the arena before him. It was a massive expanse, an arena built not just for physical challenges, but mental and emotional ones as well. The floor was dark, smooth as glass, and glowing lines ran across it, tracing intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. A booming voice echoed across the arena, the voice of the Vorteni leader, who was watching from the stands along with the rest of the council. The trial begins now. You will be subjected to your first challenge, a test of your mental strength. Suddenly, the air around them shifted, and the arena floor beneath them started to change. Dark, jagged rocks began to rise from the ground, forming a maze-like path. Strange creatures, glowing and eerie, appeared at the edges of the arena, their movements swift and unpredictable. The challenge was clear. They would have to navigate this terrifying maze while avoiding the creatures that lurked within. Elias glanced at his fellow humans. Their expressions were tense but determined. They had trained for moments like this, and they knew that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about intelligence and adaptability. As the first wave of creatures approached, Elias motioned for the group to move forward. The creatures looked almost like shadows, shifting and darting between the obstacles in the arena. Their eyes glowed bright red, and they seemed to move in a way that defied logic, as if they were able to teleport short distances. One of the human participants, Sarah, took the lead. She was agile, and her sharp instincts kicked in immediately. She dashed forward, weaving between the rocks, using the environment to her advantage. The creatures lunged toward her, but she was faster, outmaneuvering them with ease. Behind her, the others followed, each one using their own skills to navigate the maze. Some were stronger, some faster, and some more strategic. But they all had one thing in common: they refused to back down. Elias moved at the back of the group, keeping an eye on his team while also watching the alien leaders in the stands. Their faces were hard to read, but he could see a flicker of surprise in their eyes. Humans were not backing down. They were working together, using their diverse skills and strength of will to push forward. The maze became more dangerous with each turn. The creatures grew bolder, more aggressive, and the environment began to change. The rocks became steeper, the pathways narrower, and the air grew colder. But the humans pushed on, using their resourcefulness to adapt to the growing challenges. As they reached the center of the maze, they encountered the final obstacle, a towering, shifting wall of energy that separated them from the exit. The wall crackled with dangerous energy, and each step toward it sent a surge of static through their bodies. Elias took a step forward, his mind racing. This was the final test, a test of their ability to think quickly and adapt under pressure. The answer wasn't physical strength, it was intelligence, teamwork, and the ability to overcome fear. "We need to disable it," Elias called out to the group. "It's a force field. Sarah, can you find a way to disrupt the energy flow?" Sarah moved forward, her eyes scanning the area. She reached down and grabbed a small device from her belt, a piece of technology developed back home on Earth. With a quick flick of a switch, the device emitted a pulse of energy, and the force field flickered before it finally collapsed. The humans didn't celebrate. There was no time for that. They rushed through the now clear path, emerging from the maze, breathing heavily but determined. The Jakar representative, a tall, imposing figure with translucent skin that shimmered like the night sky, scoffed. "Work together. The Jacquard have seen the way humans operate. You are opportunists. You do not offer peace, you offer influence. What can you possibly offer that would make us believe you? Elias held his gaze. We offer the chance for something different, something lasting. If we wanted influence, we could have conquered your sectors by now. But we didn't. We want to build partnerships to make a better future for all. We understand the value of cooperation. The Jacquard leader said nothing, but his eyes narrowed, studying Elias. He wasn't convinced, and neither were most of the others in the room. A loud voice interrupted the growing tension. It was the leader of the Vortani, a race known for their cunning and calculated demeanor. Humans, you speak of partnerships, but how do we know you are not simply waiting for the right moment to turn on us? Your species may have gained the trust of a few, but that does not mean we should trust you. You may be capable of destroying everything we've built. We've seen it before. Elias didn't flinch, though he could feel the weight of the accusation hanging over him. The Vortani's words were not just a challenge. They were a warning. We are not here to destroy anything, Elias replied firmly. We're here because we believe in the possibility of peace, but peace requires mutual respect. It's not just about taking. It's about giving. What can we give you? What can we do to prove that we are not like the others who have come before? There was a long pause as the room fell into silence. The Sornak leader shifted in his seat, his massive figure almost filling the space, while the Jacquard exchanged quiet words in their native tongue. The tension was thick, almost unbearable. It felt as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Then the leader of the Vortani spoke again. Prove it, she said coldly. Your words are not enough. Show us your loyalty. If you truly want peace, show us how far you are willing to go for it. Elias knew what this meant. The Vortani were testing him, testing humanity. They wanted a demonstration of power, a show of force to prove that the humans were not to be underestimated. It was a challenge he couldn't back down from. We will, Elias said. His voice was calm, but his mind raced. He hadn't expected this direct challenge, but he knew that the stakes were now higher than ever. The room was watching him, and he could feel the weight of their eyes on him. He had to prove that humanity wasn't just a fleeting power, that they were here to stay. The Sornak leader, eager for a confrontation, leaned forward. Good, but know this, human. The galaxy does not bend to words. It bends to power. If you wish to change anything, you must first show your strength. Elias didn't respond right away. He let the words hang in the air. Strength. It was a word that had echoed throughout history, a word that had been used to justify countless wars and countless horrors. But Elias wasn't talking about brute force. Humanity's strength lay in their ability to adapt, to learn, and to work together toward a common goal. We will prove ourselves, Elias said finally, his voice unwavering. But not through force. We will prove ourselves through our actions, our willingness to stand beside you, and our commitment to making this galaxy a better place. The room was silent for a moment. The Vortani leader seemed to consider his words carefully, her expression unreadable. The Sornak leader grunted, unimpressed, while the Jacquard seemed to retreat into their own thoughts. But Elias knew that he had made an impact. It was subtle, but it was there. The tension in the room had shifted, ever so slightly. They weren't convinced yet, but they were listening. That was a start. Elias glanced at his delegation. They were ready, but what came next would be the real test. The stakes were higher than ever, and the peace talks had taken a dangerous turn. The galaxy's leaders were watching, and the outcome of these talks would decide the future of humanity's place among the stars. As the negotiations continued, Elias could only hope that his faith in humanity's strength, their ability to adapt and endure, would be enough to convince the galaxy's leaders that peace was not only possible, it was the only way forward. Elias stood, his calm presence commanding attention. Thank you, he began, his voice clear and steady. We are here today to seek a solution. We do not stand as conquerors, nor as subjects. We stand as partners, willing to help create a future where no more lives are lost to war. The silence in the room was deafening. The alien leaders exchanged looks. Some appeared to listen intently, others appeared skeptical, and a few seemed downright uninterested. But none of them spoke. Instead, the atmosphere became tense with the weight of what was at stake. Elias could feel the pressure building as he continued. We understand that peace is not a simple thing. It is not something that can be achieved with a single agreement or by appeasing any one faction. But we believe that peace is possible if we are all willing to give a little. Humanity has faced its own wars, its own struggles. But we have learned that the only way forward is together. We offer our assistance, our resources, and most of all, our desire to see an end to this endless fighting. Still, the leaders remained silent. The Sornak shifted in their seats, their heavy armor making a soft, metallic sound. The Zakar, ever calculating, exchanged a quiet conversation in their native language. The Vortani, ever the strategists, didn't even glance at Elias, instead focusing on their datapads, no doubt analyzing every word he said for any hint of weakness. Then a voice broke the silence. It was deep, rumbling, and unmistakably harsh. You come here with noble words, human, but what can your species truly offer us? It was the leader of the Sornak, a hulking figure whose voice held the power of centuries of domination. Your people have not yet proven themselves. You claim to want peace, but how do we know you are not simply looking to expand your influence, to gain a foothold in our sectors? Elias did not flinch. He had anticipated this question, and he was ready. We offer our knowledge, our technology, and our willingness to work with all factions. We do not seek to dominate. We seek to end the cycle of war that has ravaged this galaxy for too long. The Sornak leader scoffed but did not respond immediately. Instead, his eyes narrowed. We will see if your actions match your words, human. The galaxy is not a place for weaklings or naive dreamers. Elias met his gaze, undeterred. The future of the galaxy is not about dominance. It's about survival. All of us must survive, or none of us will. There was a long pause. The room felt colder, but Elias knew that the first steps had been taken. The first test had come, and he had passed. But this was just the beginning. The real challenge was ahead. He had to find a way to make the galaxy's leaders trust each other, to make them see that peace was the only way forward. As the talks began, Elias knew one thing for sure. The galaxy would never be the same again. And humanity was at the center of this change. The road ahead would not be easy, but humanity was used to walking difficult paths, and Elias Rook was ready to lead them, no matter what it took. As the first few hours of the peace talks passed, the atmosphere in the Galactic Council chamber grew more strained. Each faction presented their demands, their visions of how peace could be achieved. But there was one common thread. None of them fully trusted humanity. The humans were still seen as newcomers, a species that had risen from nothing to stand among the stars. Their sudden rise made them both intriguing and suspicious to the long-established powers of the galaxy. Elias Rook, however, remained calm. He had expected this. Trust was something that had to be earned, and the humans had not yet proven themselves to these alien leaders. But Elias believed in humanity's ability to change the tide of any situation, no matter how impossible it seemed. Perhaps you misunderstand, Elias said, his voice steady but firm. Humanity doesn't want to be the strongest. We want to be a part of this galaxy. We want to work together, not against each other. The platforms grew smaller as they moved forward, and the void beneath them seemed to stretch on endlessly. Some of the platforms began to crumble, falling into the abyss below, but the humans continued their steady progression. They didn't panic. They didn't lose focus. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. At one point, a massive platform broke apart entirely, sending chunks of debris crashing down into the endless void. The team had to leap to the next platform, and it was a narrow escape. The aliens watched, and their eyes narrowed as they observed the humans' ability to react swiftly under pressure. The Sornak leader stood, his posture rigid with disbelief. Impressive, but this trial is far from over. As they progressed further into the void, the platform shifts became more frequent, more dangerous. The challenge grew not just physical, but psychological. The fear of falling, the fear of failing, weighed heavily on every member of the human team. Yet they continued to push forward, each person focused on the task ahead. Then the final obstacle emerged. A massive, twisting wall of light and energy appeared between them and the final platform. It was an enormous barrier, pulsating with raw energy, and the space around it seemed to warp. It was unlike anything they had ever faced. The very air seemed to hum with power, and it felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. Elias knew this was the test of their resolve. Would they push forward into the unknown, risking everything to reach the final platform? Or would fear overcome them? And would they retreat, leaving the galaxy to doubt their strength? The human team didn't hesitate. Sarah stepped forward, carefully studying the energy field before her. "It's not about brute force," she said, her voice steady. "We need to understand it. We need to use the energy, not fight against it." With no time to lose, the team moved forward, using their combined knowledge and quick thinking to manipulate the energy field. Slowly but surely, they began to break down the barrier, allowing them to cross into the final platform. It was a test of faith, of trust, and of the human spirit's ability to persevere. As they reached the final platform, the energy barrier dissipated, and the once threatening void seemed to calm. The human delegation stood, breathing heavily but triumphant. Their mission was complete. They had passed the trial, not through sheer force or violence, but through ingenuity, teamwork, and an unwavering will to succeed. The alien leaders watched in stunned silence. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now it was clear the humans had earned their place among the stars. They had proven that their strength wasn't just in their bodies, but in their minds and hearts. Elias turned to his team, a smile breaking across his face. They had done it, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The future was theirs. The arena grew still as the human team stood together, their breathing heavy but their eyes shining with pride. They had completed the final trial, and in doing so, had proven something far greater than just their strength. They had proven their worth to the galaxy. The alien leaders, who had once looked down on humanity, now watched in stunned silence, unable to deny the brilliance they had just witnessed. The lights above them flickered, and the air seemed to hum with anticipation. The Vorteni leader, the same one who had mocked humanity at the beginning, stood up slowly. His face was unreadable, but his posture betrayed a deep sense of respect. The Sornak leader, who had shown nothing but contempt for the humans before, remained silent, but there was a glint of something new in his eyes. A respect, perhaps, or a dawning realization of the humans' resilience. The Jakar leader, known for his tactical mind, folded his arms thoughtfully, his gaze shifting between the human delegation and the rest of the council. It was the Vorteni leader who spoke first. "Humanity, we have underestimated you." The following day, the peace talks took a surprising turn. As expected, the atmosphere had grown even more tense after the challenge had been issued. Elias Rook, humanity's representative, knew that the coming hours could determine the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The pressure weighed on him, but he stood tall, determined to prove that humanity's strength wasn't just in their physical power, but in their character, their resolve, and their unique approach to challenges. The Galactic Council chamber was now filled with murmurs as the delegates took their seats, the air thick with uncertainty. The alien leaders had arrived with a single goal in mind: to test humanity's will, to force them to show their true power. Each faction had their own way of measuring strength, and the humans were about to be tested on all fronts. Elias looked over at his delegation. the few humans who had accompanied him. They were ready, but they didn't know exactly what to expect. None of them had ever faced a test like this. There had been no talks of war, no threats of violence. This was a diplomatic test, one designed to expose humanity's true nature. The leader of the Vortani stood, her cold gaze sweeping the room. "We asked you to prove your strength, and now you will. Each of you will face a trial of endurance, a test that will determine whether your words hold any weight." Elias stood. "We accept the challenge, but we will not play your games of cruelty. We will face this trial as we face all others, with integrity and strength of character." The Vortani leader's lips curled into a slight smirk. "Integrity, strength of character. You will need more than that if you hope to survive what's coming." The room went quiet. The Jakar leader leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing, as if he were watching every move Elias made. The Sornak leader sat with his arms crossed, unmoved by the human's defiance. Elias took a deep breath. This was it. There would be no turning back now. A hologram flickered to life in front of the council, projecting a massive arena, dark and foreboding. The trial would take place there, and all eyes would be on the humans. The trial wasn't about physical combat. It was a test of endurance, mental strength, and the willingness to push past human limits. The Vortani leader explained the rules. "You will be subjected to extreme challenges, both physical and mental. You will endure pain, exhaustion, and fear. Your goal is simple: survive. But know this, many have tried, and many have failed." The words hit hard. Elias knew that this was a test of everything humanity had stood for. If they failed, if they couldn't endure, their reputation would be shattered. The galaxy would view them as weak, as just another species destined for extinction. But if they succeeded, if they showed the galaxy that humans could survive even the worst trials, they could prove that humanity belonged among the stars. One by one, the representatives from each alien race spoke, offering their views on the coming trial. Their words were sharp, their expectations clear. They expected nothing less than total submission to the harshest tests the galaxy had to offer. But Elias knew that humanity had something the other species didn't: a fierce determination, an unwillingness to back down when things got tough. He had seen it in humans time and time again, whether in battle, in exploration, or in their daily lives. It was that spirit that had carried them to the stars in the first place, and it was that spirit he would rely on in the trial to come. As the details of the trial were explained, Elias could feel the weight of it all. But he wasn't afraid. He had been in tougher situations before, and this time the stakes were higher. The Vortani, Jakar, and Sornak all looked on, silently waiting for the humans to begin. "Are you ready?" the Vortani leader asked, her voice low but full of menace. Elias took a step forward, his face unwavering. "We're ready." The arena flickered to life, and the room grew dark. The trial had begun. Humanity's first test in the eyes of the galaxy had begun, and there was no turning back. Elias looked at his team, his heart steady. They would endure. They would prove that the human spirit was stronger than anything these alien leaders could throw at them. And if they succeeded, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. As they crossed the finish line, the arena grew quiet. The creatures that had once threatened them vanished, and the harsh environment returned to a neutral state. The trial was over, but the alien leader's silence was deafening. Elias looked up at the council members in the stands. The Vortani leader, once so smug, now seemed deep in thought. The Zakar's eyes glowed with curiosity, and the Sornak leader's stony expression didn't shift. But Elias could sense a change. The humans had passed the first trial, not just by surviving, but by showing the galaxy that they could adapt, think, and overcome even the toughest of challenges. "We've shown you we can endure," Elias said, his voice steady. "This is only the beginning. If you want to test our strength further, we will meet that challenge as well. But remember, this test wasn't just about surviving. It was about our ability to think, to act under pressure, and to work together. The silence in the room deepened. The alien leaders were still processing what had just happened. They hadn't expected humanity to pass this trial so easily. And yet the humans had shown them that their strength didn't lie just in their weapons or their power. It lay in their resilience, their intelligence, and their unwavering belief in themselves. And for the first time, the galaxy's leaders began to understand. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, not because of their might, but because of their ability to overcome impossible odds. The humans had passed the test. But would the rest of the trials be as simple? Only time would tell. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the second trial began. The humans had passed the first, but the Council had made it clear that they wouldn't make things easy. This was no longer just about survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity had a place among the stars. And the final trial, looming before them, was a true test of will. The room around them shifted once again, and a series of complex devices began to hum and whirl. The air became charged with energy, and the holographic field shifted into something far more intimidating. A vast arena of shifting platforms suspended in an endless void. Above, stars twinkled in the distance, but the ground beneath them was unstable, crumbling at the edges. "This is your final trial." The Vortani leader's voice echoed across the arena. "You will navigate the endless void. The platforms will shift and collapse under your feet. Only those with the greatest focus and willpower will survive." Elias glanced at his team. They had faced physical challenges. They had endured the mental trials. But this was something else. It wasn't just about strength or intellect. This was a trial of fear, of trust, and most of all, a test of their faith in each other. Could they stay focused when everything around them seemed to be falling apart? Could they work together when the stakes were the highest? One of the alien leaders, the Sornek representative, let out a low, grating laugh. Humans are quick to prove their strength, but it is the mind that will decide if you survive this test. The mind is fragile. It cracks under pressure. The Jakar leader, known for his cold, analytical nature, spoke next. "The void does not forgive. Only the strongest will remain." Despite the biting words from the Council, Elias felt a calmness wash over him. This was it. This was humanity's moment. They would show the galaxy their true strength, not by defeating opponents, but by overcoming the fear and doubt that even the most advanced species in the galaxy could not conquer. The trial began with no further warning. The ground beneath them shifted violently, and the first platform began to tilt at a steep angle. Some of the humans stumbled, but they caught themselves, their eyes sharp and focused. The alien leaders in the stands watched, their expressions unreadable. The pressure was mounting, but the humans would not be swayed. Elias signaled to the group, "Stick together. Trust each other. We do this as one." Sarah, who had been leading the group in the first trial, was now at the forefront again, her movements fluid and precise. She quickly assessed the terrain, her eyes scanning for the next platform, the next safe step. The rest of the team followed her lead, each person adapting to the shifting environment, moving with a coordination and grace that came only from years of hard work and determination. Elias felt a surge of pride at the words, but he didn't let it show. They had known all along that they had something to prove, but this moment, where the aliens acknowledged their strength, was a turning point. Humanity had not only survived, they had thrived. They had faced challenges that would have broken the will of other species, but the humans had endured, fought, and won. "You have shown that you are more than capable of holding your ground," the Vortani leader continued. "Your resilience, your intelligence, and your unity have been impressive. You have earned the right to sit at the table of the Galactic Council." The words echoed in the chamber, carrying a weight that no one could ignore. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the Sornak leader spoke, his voice cold but acknowledging. "The trials have proven that humanity is not just a passing force. You are a challenge we will have to reckon with in the future." Elias looked out across the arena, meeting the gazes of his fellow humans. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had come through it all stronger. They were no longer just Earth's representatives. They were humanity's champions. "It's not just about strength," Elias said, his voice calm but resolute. "It's about what we stand for, our unity, our resilience, and our ability to adapt. The galaxy has seen that today. But this is just the beginning. Humanity has much more to offer." The Jakar leader, who had been watching the proceedings with quiet interest, nodded slowly. "We will take your offer under consideration," he said. "The galaxy has been changed by this trial. You have opened our eyes to your potential." As the council members began to speak among themselves, Elias and his team stepped back, their hearts racing. They had done it. They had not only earned the respect of the Galactic Council, they had changed the course of history. The Council would have no choice but to acknowledge humanity as a power to be reckoned with. As they made their way out of the arena, Elias paused and looked back at the now silent Council. The galaxy had always viewed humanity as weak, small, and insignificant. But now, the tables had turned. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity, and they could no longer ignore it. This wasn't just a victory for Elias and his team. It was a victory for all of humanity. It was a statement. They were no longer the underdogs. They were a force in the galaxy. And the universe would never forget the humans who had walked away from peace talks, not because they lacked diplomacy, but because they knew they could stand tall without compromise. The galaxy had just changed, and humanity had claimed its place among the stars. The journey ahead would be difficult, but Elias and his team knew they were ready. They had faced the trials, endured the hardships, and had shown the galaxy that nothing could stand in their way. As the human delegation made its way to the exit, Elias looked up at the stars. The future was wide open, and humanity would now carve its own path. Humanity was a newcomer to this grand game. They had no ancient grudges, no centuries of conflict to hold on to. They were a fresh force, willing to act differently, and that made some of the galaxy's leaders uncomfortable. They were used to power, used to control. The idea that a new species would come and offer something different was seen as a threat. The meeting went on for hours, and while there were no major breakthroughs, there was something new in the air, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could offer a new path forward. Elias knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to fight for the peace he believed in. He had no illusions about the difficulty of the task ahead, but he also knew that humanity's strength lay in their ability to persist. The fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of these leaders, but the humans were here now, and they would not back down. No matter how long it took, humanity would keep pushing for peace. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so, as the meeting drew to a close, the tension in the room was palpable. The galaxy had been at war for far too long. The question now was whether humanity could bring an end to it, or if the same old patterns would continue. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was not afraid to face the challenge. The galaxy was on the brink of change, and humanity was ready to lead. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with an air of cautious curiosity. The leaders of countless species sat in their seats, observing the human delegation as they filed into the vast room. For centuries, humanity had been a mere footnote in galactic politics, their small planet barely noticed among the grand empires of the galaxy. Now, here they were, seated at the very heart of power, ready to broker peace between warring factions. It was a bold move. Some thought the humans were naive, others thought them reckless. But what no one could deny was the determination in their eyes. The leader of the human delegation was Elias Rook, a seasoned diplomat who had risen quickly through the ranks of his government. His calm demeanor and unshakable confidence were unmatched, even in the face of a galaxy's worth of scrutiny. Standing beside him were his closest advisors, specialists in alien diplomacy, military strategy, and most importantly, the history of galactic warfare. They had all come to this place with one goal: to convince the galaxy that peace was possible. As Elias walked into the Grand Council chamber, he felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. The eyes of the galaxy's leaders were upon him, and their expectations were high. This peace summit wasn't just a chance to end the war. It was a chance for humanity to prove their worth. Elias knew that if they failed, it could set the humans back centuries. But if they succeeded, it would mark the beginning of a new era for humanity among the stars. The chamber was an intimidating sight. The floor was made of polished stone, the walls lined with towering holographic displays showcasing the various sectors of the galaxy. Around the perimeter of the room, representatives of each faction sat at large oval tables. The Jakar were there, their ancient green-skinned forms sitting silently, their black eyes never leaving the humans. The Sornak sat in their heavy armor, their towering muscular forms casting long shadows. The Vortani, always calculating, observed with their sharp, businesslike gaze, their arms folded across their chests. As the humans took their seats at the table, the room fell silent. The Galactic Council had never hosted a delegation quite like this. The humans had earned their place at the table not through military might, but through diplomacy, hard work, and their undeniable ability to make allies where others could not. But the question remained: could the humans really bring peace to the galaxy, or were they just another species caught in the same endless cycle of war? Elias looked around the room, his eyes meeting those of the various leaders. Each one had their own agenda, their own vision for the future of the galaxy. The Jakar wanted knowledge, the Sornak craved power, and the Vorteni cared only for trade routes. And then there were the smaller factions, many of whom had suffered the most from the ongoing wars. Elias knew that all of them had come here with their own demands, their own ideas of what peace would look like. But he also knew that peace was not about getting everything you wanted. It was about compromise, about finding common ground. "Let the talks begin," the chair of the Galactic Council said, his voice deep and resonant. It was a command, one that sent a ripple of anticipation through the room.